Today, on episode number 144 of CXOTalk, I am speaking with Robert Tass, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of Pegasystems. And we're going to be talking about digital marketing and digital transformation. So it's an exciting morning on episode number 144 of CXOTalk. Robert, how are you?
Good morning, Michael. I'm terrific. Thanks for having me today.
Hey, thanks for taking the time first thing on a Monday morning. And we've known each other for a while. You were on a panel that I was fortunate enough to moderate a couple of years ago at MIT, at the MIT CIO Symposium on digital transformation. So it's great to talk with you again.
Thank you.
Robert, let's start. Tell us a little bit about your professional background and about Pegasystems so we have some context.
Happy to. So my background's probably a little bit unique in some of the CMOs that I talk to. My background actually started in the technology world, where I'd spent a number of years of my career working at enterprise technology companies like Sybase, which got acquired by SAP a while ago. And then I did a bunch of progressive startups in CRM, in internet databases, in security. And the one thing that's kind of been consistent in my career is that I've always been fascinated about what technology can do for business and how it's transforming business. And then I got into the internet probably about 15 years ago, and started on the technology side, working for a company that really was a technology company at first called Dakota, which really used analytics to power internet advertising as it's known today and all those great segments. And it really opened my eyes to helping connect customers to consumer brands, to B2B brands, and how technology was really shaping the world and how the internet was really helping to evolve all of our lives. And then I built my own startup and raised some venture capital and sold the company. It spent a lot of time in the demand side platform business. I really understood the convergence of how media was being bought and sold, not just digital media, but all media. And that was an amazing experience. And then I ended up working at JPMC in a really interesting role where I helped create its first sort of center of excellence for digital, really trying to infuse digital into the organization and build many of its capabilities that include, personalization, media buying platforms. I ran social media. I built the first content group. It was really an amazing journey to help infuse digital into one of the most largest and successful banks in the world, and really seeing how they're going about their transformation. And then about a year and a half ago, I joined Pegasystems, which, for those who don't know, is a enterprise technology company providing strategic applications to the largest global companies in the world. We serve the likes of Verizon, Vodafone, JPMorgan, American Express, and people like that, powering their customer-facing and back-office systems that really drive customer experience. And it's been an amazing experience to come to Pega, and I've been here just over a year and a half.
And Pega is a public company, and you have about $600 million in revenue.
Yep, a little more, but then growing. We're growing nicely. We're growing in a tough category, in a space that people don't know us very well. We're actually doing well globally. We have over 3,500 employees now. We have offices all around the world. And like I said, we serve large global enterprises.
Okay, so let's talk about digital marketing. What are the kinds of marketing activities that you undertake, that you do at Pega?
Well, much like everybody in both the consumer and B2B world, we have a plethora of demand generation programs, brand building programs, thought leadership programs that we run. We recently did a pretty unique piece of digital content with The Economist, and partnering with one of our key systems integrators, Accenture. We built a digital portal on The Economist talking about digital transformation. We've partnered with others like Bloomberg and Forbes, and really trying to bring about these sort of enterprise issues and using digital as a way to help the buying process. One of the things that when I joined, Pega was very much more, marketing was really a sales support function. And we've really tried to make it a growth engine for the company where we're trying to get our brand out there in a more thoughtful way and trying to educate the market on the big issues that are driving digital transformation in their large enterprises.
So what is as you're seeing your customers going through digital transformation, what are the marketing impacts of that? So how does digital transformation change marketing?
Wow, I mean, that's a topic in itself, but it's dramatic, Michael. I think the reality is that marketing is being redefined by the customer, the consumer. You know, the consumer is touching all facets of the organization. And I believe marketing is really the catalyst and the chief, customer officer in a way to help fight for that customer across the organization to ensure that every department treats that customer in the best possible way, because we no longer define marketing as just by an ad campaign. We define marketing by our experience, and that experience is end to end. And I think that's a big transition for many companies to try to make, where the marketing guys are now starting to touch things like the call center. They're starting to touch things like product design. They're starting to touch things like fulfillment. I think as we think of our own experiences, the word marketing has changed so dramatically in the last few years. And I think it's going to continue to evolve. And I think organizations that really get this are the ones that are on the forefront, pushing their definition of really the customer and how they're driving that customer centricity into their own organizations.
So, Robert, we hear about this term customer experience all the time, and you said that there's this difference between customer experience and ad campaigns. So maybe you can take us through what is the difference.
Well, I think if we all pick up our phones and look at it and you start thinking of the applications that are on your deck, whether it's Airbnb, even your banking application, or Uber, I mean, those have all redefined what our expectations are and how we expect to interact with all brands. And I think whether you're B2B or B2C, it's irrelevant. I think those expectations have been now set, and we have to respond, whether it's my HR application internally here or my Uber. I want instantaneous feedback. I want something with immediate transparency to what I'm trying to do. I recently purchased something on an e-commerce site, and I'm a big fan of the brand, and I was so disappointed in their digital experience. As you compare it to Amazon or others, it's just set the bar. And this product that I ordered took almost 10 days to get to me, and they didn't update their website with tracking information. Little things that you take for granted now are becoming the norm. And I know it's a consumer example, but I think that's in all categories. I think in my business and the B2B side, we want to take our content and push it out there. We want to have things like our product demos, which never used to be online, available. We want reviews. We want people to be able to collaborate and ask questions. We want to use digital to really help empower our customer, and I think you're seeing that across all facets.
So the skill sets and the mindset and the capabilities that are needed for marketers to create these types of experiences, as opposed to pushing out ad campaigns, is completely different. So how do you retool marketing to be able to conduct this type of experience type of campaign?
Well, I think there's a multiple-pronged approach there. I think you have to bring in experts in certain areas. Like, we have roles at Pega that didn't exist before I got here. Whether you call that the analytics role or some of the content roles I mentioned I created at JPMorgan. It's really a reimagining of the marketing function. And then I think you have to train people. I think you have to give them opportunities to experience. I think you have to create boot camps. You have to figure out how to transfer that knowledge and get experience. I remember when I was at JPMorgan and I ran social media, and we were writing the job description for the head of social media, and the executives were saying, well, let's go hire someone who's done social media at a Fortune 100 company that has 10 years, 15 years experience. And well, that person doesn't exist, and I think that's the reality. Is you have to reimagine these things, but you have to invest in training your folks and giving them opportunities. You have to partner with agencies that have expertise that you can build. But I think the most important thing is you have to have a cultural transformation program. You have to understand that this is a transformation and is a change to the way you run your business. I see often people do digital off to the side. They have the digital group, they check the box, they maybe have a mobile app and things like that. But what we're seeing today is that those fail because the customer gets a worse experience. The customer gets a negative experience where they aren't treated the same way as some of the other entry points. And I think that lack of connectivity into the enterprise is hugely detrimental to their brand. You know, my little branding story that I shared with you, you know, it's so frustrating. You walk away and it's such a bad taste in your mouth. Well, that's how the brands are being redefined. It's not by when the customer actually sees you and hears from you, but it's those micro moments that we like to talk about that are defining each of our experiences. And I think it's the companies that figure out how to map to those micro moments and really think about how everybody in the organization is just diligently attacking those to make those frictionless, to eliminate the customer's clicks, to really help them through the process. It's a really different mindset.
So there's a realigning of the organization, of the entire organization, not just marketing, around what is best for the customer and what the customer needs.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, you used to have, and again, I'm still a proponent, by the way, of advertising. I just think you can't do the ad campaign separate to the product, to the fulfillment, to the rest of the organization. You can't make these promises as a marketing guy without being able to deliver end to end on it and understanding that when that person clicks on that button, what happens? What's the digital experience? What's the connection point and how you're going to manage that all the way through to fulfillment and that entire journey. You know, McKinsey loves to talk about their customer journey. And I think it's so critical to have the entire organization bought into that vision of a customer map.
But explain a little bit more why this is the case, right? So I click on a button, I want to buy something. How does this affect the whole organization? Take us through the mechanics of it, because you're somebody who's doing this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, using my e-commerce example, I logged in to a website hoping to find out where my product was. Couldn't find it, had to call the call center. The call center had to go and search for it. The call center had to go back and figure out why I was calling, what my problem was, connect that back to the website and the web traffic that I have. And there's a huge disconnect, right? So the customer then, by the way, so here I am, I'm calling this call center, I'm angry, I'm upset. And 10 seconds later, the brand is retargeting me with an offer. How disconnected is that? Instead of retargeting me with thank you or, hey, here's 10% off because of your trouble, it's, hey, here, we want to sell you something, and have no context of your experience with me. I mean, that's the gravity of the real-time nature of this, and companies that aren't connecting those dots are going to lose. They're going to take that person who's disgruntled, and then they're going to amplify it over and over again as in that negative context. And it's so easy to have that break versus organizations like Amazon or Uber or others that have this seamless, transparent process where everybody's connected into it. Everybody knows, oh, you had a problem, you had a drop call, or your car didn't show up. Uber's, you know, emailing me 10 minutes before saying your car's going to be late, we've given you a $10 coupon. It's that kind of experience that's the new normal.
So, okay, so you have this cultural mindset that is bringing together everybody in the company around this reference point of the customer. Then you pull together the right skills, but you also need technology. So there's a technology component to enable this as well.
You know, Michael, there is, and you know, Pega is very fortunate to provide some great technology, but I can't stress enough, as I talk to a lot of my peers and our customers. I was recently at a World Economic Forum event where they had the chief strategy officers of major corporations coming together, and the theme I kept hearing from everybody was, how do I get my management to buy in? Some are creating new roles like chief digital officers. And I'm not a huge proponent of that, and we can talk about that. But I think that this is a CEO level mandate that culturally has to change the organization and the way you think. You can no longer implement a product-centric culture and hope the rest of the organization does right. Compensation structures have to change. The way you measure people's performance has to change. And it's far more integrated than it's ever been. You know, we've all seen the websites where the website is disconnected from the retail store. You know, I wanted to buy a TV a year ago, and I called Costco, and I wanted to go pick it up because I wanted it for the game, and I couldn't. They said, well, our website aren't connected to our stores. That's not okay anymore. That doesn't work. And you've got to take the entire structure and reimagine it from that customer's perspective.
So, you know, it's interesting that you mentioned the chief digital officer, because when I talk with CMOs and I talk with CIOs, there's always this question of where should the ownership of digital lie inside an organization?
You know, again, having been a guy that created a digital function at a major corporation, you know, I always viewed my job was to put myself out of a job. It's unfathomable for me to say that I can have one guy or one group that runs digital for an entire organization the size of JP Morgan, Chase, or others. And the reason I say that is that everyone has to be digital. The world is digital. It's no longer this little thing on the side where we have our website as a brochure. The website is a major channel like retail is. It can no longer be treated as, oh, someone else has got that ball, they'll figure it out. Every facet of the business has to be reimagined. Every facet, from legal, risk, compliance, product, and I can go down the list, all have to be accountable to what the digital experience is like. You know, when I was doing social media at the bank, you know, I had legal risk in the meetings with me. I had educating them on how customers were going to use, you know, Twitter to do service, how that was going to go about, how we were going to re-engineer our call center to be able to handle that. It's hugely omni-channel, right? There's nobody that gets a pass on this. And when I hear people hire chief digital officers, I worry that though I agree they can be a catalyst, but I think ultimately this is an organizational choice. This is a decision that a company has to make at a scale to reimagine their business. And that's why I'm very passionate about the fact that digital has to be a C-level, CEO level mandate, and they have to be accountable to it to really affect change.
So marketing is, in a sense, the most visible, from the outside point of view, marketing is the most visible aspect of digital because it's what the customer sees when they hit the site, the website.
Yeah, I mean, again, marketing is that advocate for doing what's right for the customer. You know, the one lesson I learned from one of my old bosses at JP Morgan, he said, Robert, you have the customer card. Your job is to make sure we don't screw it up. Your job is to protect that customer, make their experience better and better every day, and use the digital technology to help improve that. Now, we obviously want to sell them things. We want to make them better, get them the right products and things like that. But we want to be thoughtful at building that relationship. And that's the beauty of digital, is we have this amazing set of data. That's the other thing that we're seeing as an evolution, is you can't have these silos of data in the organization. You have to have one view, one moment, one set of truth around what the customer is telling you with their behavior, or even more prescriptively, their voice or their actions, and being able to have all groups leverage that. There has to be one lexicon of that customer across sales, service, marketing, product, and so forth.
We have an interesting question from Bob Rothman, who asks, how do you differentiate between customer satisfaction and customer experience?
Well, I think they're very intertwined, obviously. I think that customer satisfaction, and people use NPS as a common measure of customer satisfaction. Would they tell their friends to use the service or product? And that's a big one. I think that's a telling sign. You know, in my definition is the customer's behavior speaks the truth. What do they do with their action? Do they come to my website repeatedly? Do they use my product repeatedly? Are they showing me the behavior that I want? You know, my example of my e-commerce experience, you know, if I'm that company Am I going to go off and improve my self-service? Am I going to learn from Robert's call center call of how frustrated he was and make changes to my process? Because they didn't need that call. I'm a pretty digital guy. I wanted to solve my problem online, but I couldn't, and it didn't work. So there's an opportunity for someone to take data and improve that experience, which really then customer satisfaction as a result of.
So customer satisfaction happens when the experience is right.
I even take it a step further, Michael, and say that customer satisfaction happens when an experience isn't right, but you make it right. And maybe even proactively. You start to predict where you're going to have experiences. I used my Uber one where my car was late, and Uber knew that and knew that I waited long and proactively sent me a coupon to say, hey, sorry, bad on us, but we're trying to make it better. Those are the types of micro moments that we have an opportunity to transform our brand and our relationship and that satisfaction. Listen, we all live in an imperfect world. We know things aren't going to always go perfectly. It's how we respond to that. So when I talked to that brand earlier and they kept telling me, sorry, you're out of luck, don't know what you're talking about, that just makes the customer experience bad, the satisfaction bad. But it's when you actually have the ability to respond and change and learn, and I think that's what great brands do out there, is they take this amazing set of information and feedback and adapt their businesses to improve.
So is it safe to say that customer experience then is the sum total of these micro moments that you've been talking about?
I like that. I think that's very safe to say. I think that and that's where I come back to saying that it's not a marketing thing. It's not one guy's job to be the customer experience. I went into a hotel the other day in New York, and I wanted to check my bag, and I wasn't staying there, and I'm a Starwood Platinum guy, and the guy said no to me. And, he said it in his New York, attitude, and it just wasn't a great experience. Now, he doesn't know who I am, but that brand experience is lost there. And that person who manages that hotel has an opportunity to learn and change that. And, they've got to be able to connect that entire experience through the customer's journey, because one, I do a lot of events at hotels. I'm a great Starwood loyalist, and there's so many opportunities to just do little things like that, those micro moments, and do them better and learn what's important to your customer.
But these micro moments, this is the hardest thing. You've just described why this is so difficult, because you can lay out the best campaign in the world and have the best website, but when Robert Tass shows up at the desk, if the person behind the desk doesn't treat you in the right way, it's all for naught.
Michael, I hear you, and you're right. However, what I struggle with is that I see the silos of organizations and the way they go about learning and being iterative in the process, and I think we're not pushing the envelope. The great news is the technology is available now to be able to learn when I'm unhappy, be able to learn what my context is and experience is, and be able to apply those things. Companies just aren't choosing yet to apply them. My e-commerce example today, and they're retargeting me after a bad experience. We've all had that. We've called the call center, we've had a bad experience, and yet you're seeing another ad. What a missed opportunity that is to really build my relationship. And I think we've got to push the limits of really understanding this customer centricity mindset. My experience, by the way, is magnified, 10 times the younger you get. I have a little 5-year-old boy. When he starts and the computer doesn't work, he gets frustrated. And he's 5, and that's his bar. And I think the millennials, this is the new norm. We've got to dramatically overhaul what customer experience means. And that's not just the website or advertising campaign or social media. It's broader than that, and we all have to be accountable.
So the problem is when we think about customer experience in terms of just marketing, when in fact the experience is created by these micro moments that comprise all of the interactions that a customer has with the brand.
Absolutely. I was looking for a cell phone the other day, and I was searching around on some sites, And one of these cell phone companies took me to a web page, and it was a dead end, and it was a bad experience, right? And they lost me, and it's because the marketing guy and the fulfillment team aren't connected in that journey. It's understanding that when you make that promise of whatever that is, that to deliver that, you have to be able to deliver end to end. You know, American Express, who, just full disclaimer, is one of Pega's customers, we run their service backbone. We run their whole service architecture. When you call American Express and have a problem, you know, it's Pega that's helping fix that. What they've done amazingly well, and I love what Jim Bush says, is that, you know, service at American Express is no longer a silo. It's horizontal across every single service person at American Express. And every employee, every department has an obligation to do their part, whether that's getting me a new credit card because I might have lost it, or getting me money, or finding my luggage, or whatever that experience is. You need to have that end-to-end culture manifested in every single employee.
So this type of transformation, it is so deep and so difficult, and I imagine that for most companies this would take quite a long time, because it gets back to the cultural dimension that you were talking about at the beginning.
It is. It takes a long time. You know, we just did, I mentioned that thought leadership piece. We did a survey with Accenture and The Economist around digital transformation. And the survey talked about who's leading the charge. And there's a lot of talk about, you know, CMOs as the new change agent and all that. And surprisingly to me, only 16% of CMOs are leading the digital transformation charge. That was a pretty shocking stat. But what's also surprising to me, and I mentioned the World Economic Forum event I went to, is that I don't think we're aiming big enough. I don't think we're really transforming. I think we're making iterative change, and I think you're seeing companies do better, don't get me wrong. But man, are we really dramatically flipping over the business? You know, as I think of, and I struggle naming companies, traditional brick and mortars, that have made that transformation leap. And if you really think about it, I don't know that I can show you one. You know, maybe Netflix is a great one, because they went from the CD to the download and the digital side of the world. And they're probably one of mine that come to mind to me. The one that actually comes to mind, and it's probably unfair, but I got to give them huge credit, is Facebook. Facebook has made this leap from being a digital company to a mobile first company. I mean, they started their business and they had a little advantage. But boy, you know, you would not have thought of Facebook as a mobile company when it first went public. But that's the kind of transformation I want to see out of the, you know, the traditional Fortune 500. I want to see us really raising the bar of reimagining our businesses. You know, if I'm in the hotel business right now, you know, seeing what Airbnb's doing. You know, it'd be great to be able to check into my hotel room with my phone. Good. But we've got to reimagine business models. We've got to reimagine the way we engage that journey across all of our customers. And I saw today Marriott's going to try to buy Starwood. You know, good scale, but how are they reimagining their business, and how are they using digital to really drive that organization forward?
You know, I wanted to mention regarding Facebook, how when they went public about at about 28, I believe. And there were all of the reason, and the stock, you know, went down below the offering price, precisely for the reasons that you were describing, concerns about their ability to transform to mobile. And now, having done this so well, the stock is up over 100. So the market.
There's a great example of a CEO that stepped up and said, oh my God, this is going to change, and here's how we're going to do it. And I think that's how you shift culture. And I get it. It's really hard when you make billions and billions of dollars doing something a certain way. But again, every major business is going to be, if it already hasn't been, be disrupted. If I'm in the insurance business, the healthcare business, telco, I mean, I can go on and on. I'd love to see these companies really pushing the envelope. And I don't mean opening a little office in Silicon Valley or hiring a couple of digital guys from Google, or it's really a dramatic transformation that has to come. And I think that's a C-level, board-level mandate.
What about CRM, customer relationship management? How has what's happening to CRM in this world in which the customer relationships are changing in so many different ways?
Well, Michael, I mean, the talk we just had about digital transformation, I think CRM is being transformed. I remember, when Siebel first came out and really set the bar of what CRM and the promise of. And honestly, I think if we all look back, CRM has not lived up to the promise of what it should have been. And I think today, depending on your definition, whether it's Salesforce automation or call center automation, CRM today is needing to be and is being pushed to do a heck of a lot more. As we think of digital transformation, the ability to connect the customer from the front office to the back office takes CRM to a whole new level. Having those truths that I talked about earlier, having one place that has one 360-degree view of the customer is paramount to deliver CRM effectively, because the people that are touching your customers is a heck of a lot broader than it was a few years ago. You're no longer in that one silo doing your thing. You're now required to connect across the enterprise and have a common set of information to make better business decisions, to empower that customer. And by the way, to empower that customer at a speed that your organization's never thought of. You can no longer do things in days, months, or hours. It's seconds. The customer wants their information, and everybody has to be able to move at that. And I think that CRM being something that's now global in requirement, that needs to have predictive and adaptive analytics, that needs to be able to change to that new thing. We no longer live in a world where we can buy a system, put down several $1 million, plug it in, and walk away for 20 years. Those days are gone. The reality is we've got to change. We've got new things coming, Snapchat, WhatsApp, whatever those things might be. We've got to figure out how to harness new information into the ecosystem within our customer world, being able to apply that across all of our businesses in a speed that is just redefined how we go to market.
That's a really interesting point. So the notion of, so historically CRM was essentially a database of, let's say, communication transactions, documenting communication transactions with a customer,
right? An incomplete list.
Say again?
Sorry, an incomplete list of transactions.
Okay, an incomplete list of transactions. So I call the customer, I'm a salesperson, I put it in the CRM system. We send the customer an email, it's in the CRM system. So now with customer experience touching all of these different channels that you were describing, so when you talk about a 360 view of the customer, elaborate a little more about what you mean by that and how it's different from CRM in the past.
Well, several things. First of all, the data set that's in that 360 view, like you said, is no longer just the transactions. I'm sure you can name companies that have you in their email database, their direct mail database, and their web database, and those don't talk to each other. I subscribe to a print publication, and yet I still get offers in the mail. Or a credit card company, I own the product and I keep getting offers sent to me. The reality is CRM became this silo of that customer record, but never became the place where all the customer data is stored, mined, and optimized. And I think that's the evolution, is companies are now realizing that they have to have this central repository, and they need a brain, they need analytics and technology to help the organization optimize that experience. When I go to Verizon or my bank, I want to be able to get an offer that's right for me, not for a segment, but for me, based on my family, my situation. And I think that companies have to figure out how to connect the dots. And that's why I say that it's not just about data, it's about connecting data, people, process across the entire journey. It doesn't do me any good to make an offer that I'm going to reject, or I'm going to get rejected for if my credit's not good. That's only going to hurt my brand. It's really important to be able to take those pieces and connect the natural workflow business rules associated with that CRM view of the entire customer interaction. It's kind of my e-commerce example. The fact that they're targeting me an ad is something that's a pixel set up on that website because I went to it. It has no connection to the customer service experience that I had, and they're missing an opportunity to leverage that engagement.
So how does the data that lives inside a CRM system, how can that be used to then actually make real improvements in the customer experience? What's the connection between the data and the ultimate experience?
Well, I think, like we said earlier, when we first started the conversation, is you have to look at those micro moments that the customer is showing you where they're engaging, how they're engaging, their time spent. As using my e-commerce example this morning, I spent probably 10 minutes in my profile page on that customer, on that e-commerce site's website, and didn't do anything. If you look at my click stream, my click patterns, it didn't do anything because I was talking to the agent, it was a bad experience. They've got to take that and mine that and say, wow, look, we see a pattern here. Then they've got to connect the processes to enable change of that. They've got to create a loop that says, what else are we doing to touch this customer? Oh, we're selling them an ad? Oh my God, we shouldn't be giving him an ad when he's a dissatisfied customer. You've got to take that journey and break it into those components and understand how to create the organization to be able to leverage it. You can't have the digital marketing guys pounding ads out there and the service people trying to close call volume or call time. Those can't be the metrics that are defining customer experience today.
So you've got this body of data, and the customer comes in and now has some type of interaction, and the system basically immediately then needs to compare that interaction with data that is stored in order to trigger some type of next event in the sequence. And that next event has to be absolutely appropriate to this particular customer. And that's what creates the micro moments that you've been talking about.
You have to pass, and I sometimes say that it's sort of common sense, right? You have to pass the smell test. You have to do things. There's a set of journeys that we all have, whether it's on our own companies or others, that we should know with some predictability of what we want to occur. When I go in and I type refund on a website, it should know what I'm trying to do. It should know what it should send me to, how it should help me. And it should be able to connect my digital footprint to the call center if I choose down that path. And it should also say, how can we learn to get Robert what he needs in a way that I don't need to call the call center? Because I would have been happy to do it myself. We've proven that self-service is a really big thing. There's so many learning moments there that the organization has to take and apply across the board. It's not in one department, it's across all those departments.
And how does the organization, what's the best way for the organization to, in a sense, to use the term model those customer interactions in the right way? Because it requires so much detail, such a detailed understanding of what the customer is doing at so many different moments in time.
Well, ironically, one of the things that I tell people that they should do as sort of 101, step one, is go be a customer yourself, and actually see the journey and experience it across all devices, experience it across how you would do it on a mobile phone, a tablet, and so forth. And, it's a huge eye-opening experience. Number two, listen to all the call center calls. 3, look at all the drop-offs in different phases of the journey as you would predict. I think those are all things that you could rally and create culture change around and really be able to reimagine those experiences. And you have to make this cultural where everybody in your organization is going after this and everybody is aligned in solving those and removing friction through the process.
Okay, Robert, we only have about 5 minutes left. And so for somebody who's listening that is thinking, God, I want to do all of this, but it's like rocket science, where should this person start?
I think you have to start by creating a culture in the organization that says the customer is at the center of our business. The customer is going to drive and make every decision around our strategy, around our operation, and is going to be our true north. And that's a big, big statement, just so we're clear. I've been to a lot of presentations where everybody says we're going to be customer centric and we're going to do this, but there's some real tenets to making that decision. There's some hard choices that you're going to have to make. Things that are not going to be popular, they're going to cost money. It's a big decision to really make that decision to put that customer in the center. The second thing you need to do is bring in experts in different pieces of that customer experience that can influence the whole. So I think that bringing in digital, mobile, analytics, those content skills are important to the team. I don't believe you can replace your entire team. I think you've got to bring in and infuse that expertise, and you've got to create a collaborative culture to be able to take that in. That's why I don't love the chief digital officer, because I feel like sometimes business owners say, well, the digital guy will figure it out. And it doesn't kind of work that way. You all have to be on the hook for that. But that's why I think each team member across all the functional areas needs to bring in some of this digital native skill set. And then third and final is you got to hold yourself accountable to the customer. The customers don't lie. Their behaviors, how they use stuff, how they go about stuff, they show you with their actions how and what they like, what they don't like. And by the way, ask them. They'll tell you. They want to give you feedback. They want to be a part of the process. You know, they want to make their experience better. And that's, I think, is an amazing shift in our world where the customers are actually dying to be a part of it. And when you have brand loyalists like me, with my experience today, I'm dying to help that company figure out how to make it better because I want to give them my business. But if they don't and they continue to ignore my feedback and ignore my 3 calls to the call center and my web traffic, I'm going to leave. I'll find somebody who won't. And I think those imperatives are critical for organizations to go take.
So create the right culture, get the skills in place that you need, be accountable to the customer, and actually listen to the customer.
Yes.
I guess that's a pretty good summary of what's needed. Obviously, it's easier said than done, by far.
It is. You know, I think that it's just such an amazing time to be in the marketing suite and to have that moniker and that mandate, that ethos right now. It's such an exciting time. I wake up every day enthusiastic, excited, a little petrified, but I just think we're in such an amazing time where we're redefining everything. Nothing has to be done the way it was done last time or last year or whenever. We have a clean slate, and our customers will tell us what they like, and we can build on that, and we just have to want to listen and be able to move at a speed that's very different. We're not doing 12, 24-month planning cycles anymore. We have instantaneous feedback. We just got to train our organizations to listen and be able to take advantage of them. And the next 5 years of marketing is going to be one heck of a ride.
Okay, Robert Tass, this has been very eye-opening about digital transformation and the role of marketing. We have been speaking with Robert Tass, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of Pegasystems, and you have been watching episode number 144 of CXOTalk. Robert, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's been a very, very fast 45 minutes, and Robert will have to do it again another time. Everybody, thank you again, and have a great day. Bye-bye.